My name's Roosevelt Reagan. And today, I saw a lot of people doing the Google slideshows, and I decided, hey, I'm going to do that. And you can read the title. We're going to do the most underrated presidents. I've seen best, worst, but I haven't seen one doing underrated. I've seen Retro's underrated list back when that was a thing. And you know what? I'm going to do my own. I was going to do top 10, but the problem is, I couldn't think of a 10th one. So I had a little help. I had a little chat with Jackson Jefferson Goated. So he gave me some advice on who to include. He said Thomas Jefferson, because of course he did. He also said Andrew Jackson, but no, we're not going to include him. He's not on the list. Anyway, I guess I can see why he would think he's underrated, because all those people complaining about him being a hypocrite and all that. So I can see his understand. But most people rank him in like one of the greatest of all time, but not like top 3. So I could see. Now, time for the real list. We got Grant. After seeing that Monsieur Z's list, saying he's the worst president, that's just ridiculous. All those people complaining about the corruption, putting him lower ranking, considering on the bottom half of presidents. It's like, he did great work continuing Lincoln's legacy on what he wanted for the country. You know, that was Grant, man. He's real good. You know, he flushed out the Klan. Was one of the greatest allies to the black people. All those newly freed slaves. And, helped undo all the Johnson's mistakes. So, he did a lot of good. But most people hark on all the bad. When there's more to Grant, he was good. It's unfair how they treat him. He was a war hero. Well, granted, that doesn't affect his presidency, but man, give Grant his due. We got James K. Polk. Well, most land acquired was him. He accomplished all he said he was going to do in a term. One of the most effective presidents. But the reason why he's not higher is because I feel like everyone says he's the most underrated president. Like all over YouTube, I see it, most underrated president. And heck, we talked about him in school. So he's not, when everyone says you're the most underrated president, you're not really that underrated if everyone's talking about you. We got Chester Alan Arthur's up next. Civil service reform. He got it all done after Garfield was killed. He managed to get it done. He signed it off despite being created by it. Great comeback story of Garfield. Such a swamp creature, being one of its greatest enemies when he actually becomes president. And most people consider him a mediocre one, a forgettable. Like, no one remembers this guy. I saw a list of most forgettable presidents. He was number 1. That should tell you everything. No one knows who this guy is. And he set a lot of good precedents for civil service reform and merit. And that's good. And even when they do know who Arthur is, they only hark on the Chinese Exclusion Act. So even when they do know him, they make him out to see he was a bad president. When he wasn't. He was real good. He did a good job. So he's very underrated. William McKinley. I've heard it said that in this image he looks like a cryptid. For some reason, Jackson Jefferson Gold told me that. I think he has a poll about it. But, I guess. I don't really see it myself, but whatever. Anyway, McKinley, again, very effective man. Super effective. Got a lot done. He fixed the economy. Most presidents who promise to fix the economy, they don't usually do that. But he did. If you ask me, he's probably the only president that was able to fix an economy with tariffs. Granted, other presidents have had tariffs and not ruined the economy, but none of them have been able to actually fix it. Like Hoover, he tried to fix with tariffs. Look how well that went. McKinley was one of the few people that actually made it work. And also, War with Spain, he planted the seed of America becoming a big deal. All that stuff Roosevelt would get done, he planted the seed. He got it all started. He could have been on Mount Rushmore. Thinking how much presidency he was going to start if he actually got a chance to live. Then he got shot down. Most people don't give him that credit, so he's pretty underrated. Now, next we got Taft. Most people dunk on Taft for being fat. Now he got stuck in the bathtub. That's all they say. They make fun of him for being fat. Like, he did more than that. He was like a sequel to Theodore Roosevelt. He busted up more trust than he did. And he never even got stuck in the bathtub. So the most well-known thing of him is a lie. Like how they could do this to my boy Taft. Look at him, one of the finest mustaches of a president. He was very effective man. Very neutral man. Very moderate man. Very good. That's a good thing. Also less aggressive on the foreign stage. He's using dollar diplomacy instead of the big stick, right? Less aggressive, just more agreeable, more peaceful. Bust up or trust. He's just like Theodore Roosevelt, more docile, I guess, but not as energetic, so he doesn't get as much of the credit. And also only one term, sandwiched right in between Wilson and Roosevelt. So he usually gets set aside in favor of those guys. But there's more to Taft than that. Taft's very underrated. He did a lot of good. Like Taft, man, people need to give more credit to Taft. Up next, James Madison. Now, I know what you're thinking. Madison? Why is he here? I mean, Jefferson was a shock, but I couldn't think of anyone. So what's Madison doing here? Well, I've seen it all over the internet. Like 2 people in this community have put this man in the D tier. They've said LBJ was better than this man. And I just can't stand it. I'm a big advocate for our founding fathers. So this disrespect to say LBJ was better than any founding fathers, just I don't like it. So I'm going to be a defender of James Madison. He continued a lot of Jefferson's early visions before the War of 1812. He was doing very good at that. And then the War of 1812 happened, and everyone harks on the War of 1812, but come on, it wasn't even that bad. It's like America wasn't destroyed. It wasn't like with Vietnam where everyone turned on him. It went well. We didn't win the war, but we didn't lose like in Vietnam. We went from the White House breakdown to decimating the army that beat Napoleon in a couple minutes in New Orleans. Like, that's a great comeback. Sure didn't go well, but near the end, we managed to stick the landing. It ushered in the era of good feelings, and the most unified we've ever been in this country. Madison got started. And it's like the War of 1812, it doesn't drag down his presidency that bad. I feel like we're overreacting. The White House burned down. Big deal. We stuck the landing. We were able to come back. The War of 1812, it proved that the revolution was no mistake. It was just like the revolution. We proved that independence was no mistake. Ushered in the era of good feelings. It's like, it's just overreaction to the War of 1812. So Madison, he's no D tier. D tier is just too far. Sure, I get the War of 1812 does drag him down. He could have been a very great president if it had been for that. Up next, we got Rutherford Hayes. And I love Rutherford Hayes. I ranked him pretty high in my favorite, so I like this guy, so you probably figured he might be here. Everyone, they either forget him or just label him as a compromised candidate. Oh, how you abandoned the slaves and all this gobbledygook. I'm here to tell you today, that's nonsense. All that civil service reform that I praised Arthur for, couldn't have happened without Hayes. Hayes, also Grant, all those people they harked on Grant for, Hayes fixed. The economy, Hayes fixed it. Corruption, Hayes fixed it. Saved the nation of Paraguay. It's a good foreign policy too. Everything, man, he was just chilling. He did nothing bad. Well, except for, I guess, repelling the truth. But that was going to happen anyway. It didn't really matter. Tilden would have done the exact same thing. It's just, we needed someone like Hayes. A moderate on various issues. Someone that could get things, just sit there peacefully and just get things done and not make a big deal out of it. And speaking of that, that's the exact reason why Calvin Coolidge is here too. When it comes to these presidents, we need them to just shut up and just do their job. And nothing embodies that more than Calvin Coolidge. A quote from his is, "The greatest achievement in my administration is just minding my own business." And I agree, Mr. Coolidge. Just silent Cal. Physical conservative. Very limited government. I like that. Those are my top favorite things. Abiding by the Constitution, just minding his own business. Of all the presidents after the Founding Fathers, Calvin Coolidge probably will be the one they're most proud of. He gave citizenship to Native Americans. That's a good start. Everything this man did, he did well. The only mistake for Calvin Coolidge was that he supported prohibition. Prohibition's just bad. It doesn't work. People drank more after it. It just doesn't work. So him supporting that was bad. And also all the mistakes Harding did, yeah, he fixed it. Corruption fixed it. Economy fixed it. Everything. Just effective president, minding his own business, abiding by the Constitution, not expanding the power of the presidency, just minding his own business. He was the last president to lower the debt. And he stepped into office 100 years ago. We need more people like Coolidge. Though, if you've been keeping count, that's not my number one. This is number two. Number one may or may not shock you. But I think, in my opinion, if that means anything, though, in the opinion of one Roosevelt Reagan, the one that loves Reagan, and, and also the one that loves Theodore Roosevelt and Forrest Gump, that opinion matters. So when I say this is the most underrated president, it might carry some weight. So that being said, in my opinion, the single-handedly most underrated president, the underappreciated by our standards, the one that needs more attention brought on him, is James Monroe. When people bring up underrated, when you ask who's the most underrated president, they always say Coolidge or Polk. That's about it. In that conversation, Monroe's not even brought up. And that's just why I don't like that very much. Monroe, man, when I talked about the greatest unity this country ever knew, sure, Madison started, but it was really under Monroe when we actually knew what was going on. It was all under Monroe when it got going. His presidency was the era of good feelings. Everyone was feeling good when he was president. More loyal to the Jeffersonian cause than Madison was. He was just like Jefferson without the Embargo Act. He made Missouri a state. I'm from Missouri. I was born and raised in Missouri. Okay, so maybe I'm a little biased, and also founding father. Last founding father president. That's a big deal to me. Just also, again, minding his own business. Very effective man. Monroe Doctrine, very big deal. Kicked out all those European dictators oppressing South America. All those monarchs and oppressors, kicked them right out. Though granted later, it would be used just to replace them with American ones, but, it had good intention. Jefferson supported it. It established some good things in the future. Very influential piece of policy. Theodore Roosevelt loved it. A lot of presidents after him. It was all because of the Monroe Doctrine. He created it. Well, Quincy Adams did a lot of the work for it, but it's the Monroe Doctrine, not the Adams Doctrine. Very effective cabinet too. You got John Quincy Adams. He was a very effective Secretary of State. All those good foreign policy. James Monroe was with the help of John Quincy Adams. The Secretary of Treasury was William Crawford, who I would have voted for. I support him. Again, gained some land. We gained Florida because of him when Andrew Jackson led an illegal war down in Florida, which he probably shouldn't have done, and James Monroe did not say he could do. But that's Jackson's problem. Very effective. He hired some of the best people. He knew that he didn't know everything, and he could hire some very competent people to his cabinet. He knew just what to do. Very smart man. What makes him the most underrated is, one, he was a very great president. I consider him one of the top 10 greatest presidents. But two, what makes him the most underrated is because when it's brought up, his name's not even mentioned. So that makes him even more underrated in my eyes. We also, that's about it. Well, here's some honorable mentions that aren't mentioned in the video. I don't have any images for them, but, Reagan was going to be here. But then I thought that's too much of a ripoff of retros. I said, if you ask me, Reagan's not really that underrated. You ask any conservative man, you'll find out he's not that underrated. He was the icon of the Republican Party for a really long time. So, he's not really that underrated in my eyes. I was almost going to include him purely for the fact it's the Roosevelt Reagan channel, but I felt that just wasn't necessary. Everyone knows. A lot of people know Reagan's great. So, yeah, no Reagan. I guess I can mention him. Because it's the Roosevelt Reagan channel. I can't just not mention Ronald Reagan. I just made this video because it's been a bit since I made a video. Also, I felt like if you've seen my posts lately, you see I've been focusing on Forrest Gump. Just consider this return to form, going back to what presidents. Also, this is in tribute to Retro Historian, whose computer done broke. Although I hear he is coming back. But if he doesn't make this style of content again, consider this a tribute to that. You made this list. Now I am. If you do quit retro, well, you're not gonna quit. But if you quit this history stuff, don't worry. You're in that legacy you left behind's in good hands with people like me, Jackson Jefferson Goated. So if you do retire from the history stuff, don't worry about it. We'll continue where you left off, retro. I guess there's other people too. That's my list. That's about it. That's all I have to say.